I've traveled through airports more times than I can count. I know the usual security protocols, the boarding procedures, the mind-numbing routine of waiting around for hours, trying not to go insane from overpriced coffee and uncomfortable chairs. I thought this trip would be just like any other. I was wrong, because this time, I ended up being detained by a private security team, interrogated, and forced to delete a photo. And the reason? Elon Musk. This is the story of how I accidentally got caught up in something I wasn't supposed to see. I was at LAX airport, killing time before my next flight. My layover was about 2 hours long, just enough to be annoying, but not enough to leave the airport. I had my coffee, my phone, and a comfortable enough seat near my gate. Everything felt normal. The usual mix of people rushing to their gates, airport announcements crackling over the intercom, the constant hum of luggage wheels rolling over polished floors. I wasn't paying much attention to anything. And then, I saw them. At first, it was just movement out of the corner of my eye. A group of men in dark suits, moving too fast, too coordinated. They weren't like the other passengers. They weren't chatting, checking phones, or even looking around. They walked in formation, their shoulders squared, their pace synchronized. Something about them felt off. I've seen VIP entourages before, celebrities, business executives, even politicians, but this looked like a tactical operation. And that's when I noticed who was in the center of them. Elon Musk. At first, I wasn't sure it was him. He wasn't dressed like a billionaire CEO on a public appearance. No designer suit, no PR team following behind, no media frenzy. Just a dark hoodie, jeans, and sneakers. Head slightly down. Walking fast. Like he was trying not to be seen. That didn't make sense. Why was Elon Musk, one of the most famous people in the world, walking through a commercial airport like a regular traveler? Why wasn't he using a private entrance? Where was his security detail? I looked around, expecting to see photographers, fans, or at least a few curious onlookers. But the strangest part? No one else seemed to notice him. It was like I was the only person who saw what was happening. The men in suits guided him toward a side exit, one of those restricted doors meant for airport staff. There was no boarding call, no announcement. Just a quiet, deliberate escort out of public view. Something about it felt secretive, almost like they were hiding him. I didn't even think before my hand moved. I pulled out my phone, and that was the moment everything changed. As soon as I raised the camera to take a photo, two things happened at once. First, one of the men in the security team turned his head directly at me. Not a glance, not a casual look. A full, deliberate turn, like he already knew I was there. Second, my phone screen went black. I swiped. Nothing. Pressed the power button. Nothing. It was dead. Fully charged 1 second ago, dead the next. That's when I felt a hand grip my arm. "Sir, come with us." My body froze. I turned my head slowly and saw two men in suits standing behind me. They weren't airport security. No TSA badges. No visible ID. Just blank expressions and firm grips. "Come with us." Now, I wasn't given a choice. They led me away from the crowd, toward a hallway I wasn't supposed to enter. That's when I realized I just made a huge mistake. My heart was pounding as I was escorted through the airport, away from the terminal, away from the people, into an area I wasn't supposed to be in. I didn't resist, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't normal. I've seen people get pulled aside by TSA before. This wasn't that. There were no uniforms, no badges, no standard security procedures. Just two men in suits, gripping my arms firmly, moving quickly but without urgency, as if they had done this 1,000 times before. Like this was routine. Like I wasn't the first person they had done this to. We entered a side hallway, marked Authorized Personnel Only. At this point, I started to panic. I turned my head, looking for anyone who might see what was happening. A TSA officer, an airport worker, another passenger, someone. But no one was paying attention. No one even glanced in our direction. It was like I had already disappeared. We reached a door with no sign, no markings. One of the men swiped a keycard, and the door clicked open. Inside was a small, windowless room. A plain metal table, 2 chairs, and a single light overhead that buzzed softly, flickering slightly. Classic interrogation setup. My stomach twisted. This wasn't TSA. This wasn't some routine airport security check. This was something else. And I had no idea what I had just gotten myself into. "Sit down." One of the men motioned toward the chair. His voice was calm. Too calm. I hesitated. For a split second, I considered running. But where? I was already deep inside the restricted area. They would catch me before I even reached the door. So, I did what they wanted. I sat down. The second man stood near the door, arms crossed. The first one sat across from me. For a few seconds, he just stared at me, like he was waiting for me to break. Then, finally, he spoke. "Where is the photo?" His voice was even, controlled, almost robotic. Not aggressive, but not friendly either. Like he already knew the answer. I swallowed hard. I didn't have the photo. My phone had shut off before I could even take it. I told him that. I told him I didn't know what was going on. He didn't react. He didn't even blink. Then he leaned forward slightly, repeating himself. "Where is the photo?" A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't a question. It was a test. A way to see if I would lie. I reached into my pocket, slowly, and pulled out my phone. Pressed the power button. The screen flickered back to life. Battery, 87%. That didn't make sense. It was at 0% just a few minutes ago. I unlocked it and opened my gallery. No photo. Nothing. It was as if I had never even tried to take it. I turned the screen toward him, my hands slightly shaking. "There's nothing." "See." He glanced at the phone for half a second, then back at me, expression unchanged. And then, in the same calm voice, he said something that made my blood run cold. "We already deleted it." My stomach dropped. What? How? I hadn't even touched my phone since they grabbed me. I hadn't connected to Wi-Fi, hadn't plugged it in. How did they delete something that never finished being taken? I felt a cold sweat break across my skin. This wasn't just security. This was surveillance. And if they could delete files from my phone before I even saw them, what else could they do? I looked back at the man across from me. His face was still unreadable, still calm, like he had done this 100 times before, like he already knew what I was thinking. And then he said something even worse. "You don't need to understand. You just need to forget." Forget? Forget what? That I saw Elon Musk walking through the airport? That I tried to take a picture? That I ended up in this room? What the hell was going on? I was about to say something when the door opened. A third man walked in. Older. Gray suit. Cold eyes. He glanced at me for only a second before turning to the man across from me. He gave a small nod. And just like that, I was free to go. No charges. No warnings. No explanations. Just a single phrase from the man in the gray suit before I was escorted back to the terminal. Remember nothing. I walked out of that room in a daze. The moment the door opened, I was escorted back through the same corridors I had been dragged down just minutes before. Except now, there was no force. No tight grip on my arms. They just let me go. Like nothing had happened. Like I was just another random traveler who had wandered somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. I stepped back into the terminal, feeling the rush of normal airport life around me. The voices of passengers, the distant hum of rolling suitcases, the beeping of boarding announcements. Like none of it had been real, but it was. I could still feel it in my body. The tension, the fear, the confusion, the absolute certainty that I had just been part of something I wasn't supposed to witness. I made my way toward a quiet corner of the terminal and sat down, my hands still trembling slightly. I needed to think. I needed to make sense of what had just happened. I pulled out my phone and checked my camera roll again. Still nothing. No photo. No accidental screenshots. No sign that I had even tried to take a picture. But that didn't mean nothing happened. So I did the next logical thing. I opened my call log. My texts. My emails. Nothing. No record of who detained me. No message from airport security. No sign that I had even left the terminal. I was about to put my phone away when a notification popped up. New message. No number. No contact name. Just a single word. Forget. My chest tightened. I looked around instinctively, scanning the crowd, expecting to see one of the men in suits nearby. But there was no one watching me. At least, not that I could see. I stared at my phone, my brain scrambling for an explanation. Maybe it was just a glitch. A spam text. But I knew it wasn't. And when I tried to take a screenshot, the message disappeared. Like it was never there. I leaned forward, pressing my fingers to my temples. What had I even done? All I did was try to take a photo of Elon Musk. That's it. That's all. So why did it feel like I had witnessed something bigger? Why was security so desperate to make sure I didn't remember? And why was I getting a text message from no one? I knew I had two choices. Could pretend nothing happened. Go home. Go back to my life. Tell myself it was a misunderstanding and move on. I could start asking questions. Dig deeper. Look into what I had seen. Try to understand why they wanted me to forget. And here's the thing. I should have picked option one. I should have walked away. But instead, I started looking for answers. And that's when things really got dangerous. I couldn't just forget about it. The way they dragged me into that room. The way they looked at me like I wasn't even a person, just a problem to be dealt with. The way my phone had shut off at the exact moment I tried to take that picture. It didn't feel random. It felt deliberate, like someone had planned for this exact situation. And I couldn't stop thinking, why? What did I almost capture? What was so important that a team of private security would detain me, erase my phone, and then send me a message telling me to forget? I needed to know, but I didn't realize that looking for answers was the worst decision I could make. I started searching as soon as I got home. I looked up anything I could find about Elon Musk and LAX. There was nothing in the news about him being at the airport that day. No photos, no social media posts, nothing. That was strange. People spot celebrities all the time, and Elon Musk isn't exactly someone who can go unnoticed. So why wasn't anyone talking about it? I went deeper. I checked flight records, trying to see if a private jet linked to him had landed that day. Nothing. No arrivals. No departures. As if he had never been there at all. That's when I started thinking about the security team. They weren't wearing anything identifying. No TSA patches. No airline logos. No law enforcement badges. They could have been anyone. I went through lists of private security firms, trying to match the uniforms or the way they moved. But I found nothing that fit. And the more I searched, the more I started to feel uneasy. Like I was being watched. It wasn't anything obvious. Just small things. An unfamiliar car parked outside my apartment late at night. A man I didn't recognize standing at the corner near my building, looking down at his phone but never actually typing anything. The feeling that someone was following me whenever I left the house. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was just paranoid because of what happened. But then, something happened that I couldn't explain. I was at a coffee shop, sitting in the back, away from the windows, going through more records on my laptop. The cafe was quiet, barely a few people inside. Then my laptop screen flickered. For a second, everything froze. Then my browser closed. Every tab. Then my desktop went blank. All my files, all my saved documents, gone. A single message popped up on the screen. Stop looking. I stared at it, my heart pounding. Before I could do anything, the screen shut off completely. When I restarted it, everything was back to normal, as if nothing had happened. But I knew better. Someone had just sent me a warning, and they wanted to make sure I knew exactly what it meant. I packed up my laptop and left immediately. I felt exposed, like someone was watching me right at that moment. Maybe they were. I had no idea how far this reached. All I knew was that I wasn't supposed to be asking questions. And if I kept digging, I might not like what I found. I didn't go straight home. Something inside me told me that would be a mistake. Instead, I took a long route, stopping in random stores, changing my direction at the last second, checking every reflection in every window to see if someone was behind me. If they were following me, I wasn't going to make it easy for them. By the time I finally walked into my apartment, my pulse was racing. I locked the door, pulled the blinds, and turned off my phone. Then I sat there, staring at the screen of my laptop, hesitating before turning it back on. It felt like a trap. Like the second I powered it up, someone would be watching again. But I needed to know if anything was missing. If whatever happened at the cafe had erased something I hadn't even noticed yet. I pressed the power button. The screen lit up. Everything looked normal. Then I checked my browser history. It was empty. Every search I had done, every link I had clicked, gone. Even the autofill suggestions were wiped. Like I had never looked for anything at all. Like I had never even been interested in what happened at the airport. But I was. And whoever had done this, they knew it. I spent the next few days trying to act normal. I went to work. I answered texts. I forced myself to ignore the little things. The car parked across the street that didn't belong to anyone in my building. The man I kept seeing in the grocery store but never actually buying anything. The strange delay in my calls connecting. As if someone was listening before letting them go through. I told myself I was imagining it. That maybe I had gotten too paranoid. That maybe it really was just some routine security thing, and they had already moved on. Then I got another message. No sender. No number. Just one word. Final warning. I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't over. It had never been over. They had let me walk out of that airport because they thought I'd stay quiet. Because they thought I would just let it go. But I hadn't. I had kept looking. And now, they were letting me know that they knew. I turned my phone off again, pacing my apartment, trying to think. Was I in actual danger? Or was this just intimidation? How far were they willing to go? I sat down, exhaled slowly, and made a decision. If they wanted me to stop looking for answers, then I needed to find them now, before they made sure I couldn't. I pulled up my laptop again, this time using a VPN, burner accounts, anything I could think of to keep myself from being tracked. I started searching, but not for flight records, not for news articles. This time, I searched for something else. I looked for people who had been detained at airports under strange circumstances. I wanted to know if this had happened before, if someone else had seen what I had seen. And after an hour of digging, I found something. A blog post. It was old, years old. The formatting was broken, the images missing, but the words were still there. I tried to take a picture of someone important at an airport. Security took me, wiped my phone, told me to forget. Then my life got weird. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I clicked the post, but before it could load, the entire web page vanished. The tab closed. The screen flickered. Then a new message appeared, bold and clear, filling my entire screen. You were warned. I slammed my laptop shut, pulse hammering. This wasn't intimidation anymore. This was a threat, and I had just crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that message. You were warned. It wasn't just a threat. It was a statement, a reminder that whoever these people were, they weren't just watching me. They were in my life, in my phone, in my laptop, erasing things before I could even process them. And the worst part? They weren't trying to hide it anymore. They wanted me to know. I sat in the dark for hours, trying to figure out what to do. I could report this to someone. But who? The police? They'd laugh me out of the station. The FBI? What would I even tell them? That I saw Elon Musk in an airport and now I was being watched? I didn't even have proof. They took care of that. All I had were a few strange messages and a deep, gut-wrenching certainty that I had stumbled onto something I wasn't supposed to. I checked the time. For 17 a.m. The city was dead quiet outside my window. I needed to clear my head, so I did something I never do. I left my phone at home, pulled on a hoodie, and went for a walk. The streets were empty. Just me, the occasional parked car, the sound of my footsteps echoing on the pavement. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was making this bigger than it actually was, that maybe it really was nothing. Then I saw it. A black SUV, parked across the street from my apartment. No lights on, no engine running, just sitting there, waiting. I turned away quickly, forcing myself not to react. Maybe it was a coincidence. Or maybe it was the same SUV I'd seen parked outside my office 2 days ago. Or the one I caught in my rearview mirror on my way home from the coffee shop. I kept walking, took a random turn, then another. I glanced over my shoulder. It was still there, moving slowly, following me. I didn't run. I didn't want to make it obvious. I just kept walking, turning at the next intersection, slipping into a convenience store, pretending to browse the shelves. A few minutes passed. Then I stepped outside. The SUV was gone. I exhaled. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe it wasn't the same one. Maybe I was making myself crazy. I walked back home, keeping my head down, my mind racing. The second I stepped into my apartment, I locked the door, pulled the blinds, sat down, trying to process what just happened. I turned my laptop back on, hesitated for a second, then opened a private browser. I searched for one thing. Who investigates private security firms? If no one else was going to help me, I was going to find someone who would. I didn't expect to find much. Most high-level security firms don't leave behind a digital trail. They operate in the shadows, quiet, efficient, invisible. But I wasn't looking for just any security firm. I was looking for them. The ones who had dragged me into that interrogation room. The ones who had wiped my phone, erased my browser history, and were now, apparently, following me. I scrolled through pages of search results, clicking on anything that looked even remotely connected. Most of it was generic. Corporate websites with vague mission statements, specialized risk management solutions, executive protection services. But then, buried deep in an old Reddit thread, I found something. A comment. If you ever get detained in an airport by guys in suits with no badges, you probably ran into Horizon. I stopped breathing for a second. That name meant nothing to me. But the way it was written casual, like an inside joke, told me whoever posted it knew something. I clicked their profile. Deleted. No posts. No comments. No account history. Just gone. Like they had never existed. I kept digging. The deeper I went, the more I started to notice a pattern. A handful of obscure news stories, barely covered. People detained in airports under national security protocols. No arrests, no charges, no records. And in every single one, there was no official agency named. No TSA, no Homeland Security, just private contractors. Who the hell were these people? And why were they operating inside an airport like they had more power than the actual government? I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. I had found something. Not enough to fully understand it, but enough to confirm that I wasn't crazy. Enough to know that what happened to me wasn't random. And if I had seen something I wasn't supposed to see, that meant there had to be other people like me. People who had gotten too close. People who had started asking questions. People who had disappeared. My phone buzzed. I flinched. It was still off. Or at least, I thought it was. The screen flickered. A message appeared. Final warning. Walk away. I stared at it, my fingers tightening around the edges of my phone. This wasn't just a scare tactic anymore. This was a last chance. A reminder that I had a choice. Stop now, or deal with the consequences. I swallowed hard. My instincts were screaming at me to listen, to shut my laptop, forget everything, move on with my life. But I already knew the truth. I had gone too far. I wasn't walking away from this. Not now. Not ever. I stared at the message. Final warning. Walk away. It felt different this time. Before, their messages had been cryptic, passive. This one wasn't. It was clear, direct, and final. And I knew what it meant. If I didn't stop now, if I didn't walk away, then whatever happened next wouldn't be another warning. It would be something worse. I shut my laptop. My hands were shaking. I had been playing a game without knowing the rules, and now I was dangerously close to losing. I needed to get out of my apartment. Somewhere public. Somewhere I could think without feeling like every shadow in my room was watching me. I grabbed my keys and left. It was just past midnight. The streets were quiet, the occasional car passing by, headlights cutting through the darkness. I walked fast, keeping my head down, moving on instinct. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to move. But the entire time, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone, that someone was watching. I turned a corner, glancing over my shoulder. No one. But that didn't mean they weren't there. I kept walking. Faster now. I found myself at an all-night diner, half empty, dimly lit. The kind of place where nobody asks questions. I slid into a booth in the back, ordered a coffee, and sat there, trying to steady my breathing, trying to convince myself that I wasn't in over my head, that this was still something I could control. Then the bell above the diner door rang, and everything changed. A man walked in. Not one of the men from the airport. Not someone I recognized. But there was something about him, the way he moved, the way his eyes swept the room like he was searching for someone. For me. He walked to the counter, ordered a coffee, then casually took a seat 2 booths away from mine. Facing me. Watching. He didn't say anything. He didn't do anything. He just sat there. And I knew. He wasn't here by accident. I looked down at my phone. The message was still there. Final warning. Walk away. Had they sent him? Was this another warning? Or was this something worse? I had to make a choice. Stay and see what happens, or get out while I still could. I wrapped my fingers around my cup, staring at the man, waiting for him to make the first move, waiting to see if I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. I kept my hands wrapped around the coffee cup, forcing myself to stay calm. The man in the booth 2 spots away hadn't moved. He hadn't pulled out a phone, hadn't looked at a menu, hadn't even touched the coffee the waitress had placed in front of him. He was just sitting there, watching me. I could feel my pulse hammering in my ears. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. If I got up and left, would he follow? If I stayed, was I just waiting for him to make the first move? Every instinct in my body told me that whatever happened next, it wouldn't be good. I reached for my phone, pretending to check messages. But what I was really doing was opening the camera. If they erased things from my phone before, I wanted to see if they'd try again. I tilted the screen just enough to frame him in the shot. And the second I did, he turned his head toward me. Like he knew. Like he could sense what I was doing. He didn't glare. Didn't smirk. Didn't do anything except hold my gaze. And then, slowly, deliberately, he shook his head. Once. A warning. Or a threat. I wasn't sure which. I put my phone down. I had my answer. They were still watching. Still controlling what I saw. What I did. What I thought I could get away with. I had spent so much time convincing myself I had some control over this situation, that I could keep digging and no one would stop me. But the truth was, they had been 5 steps ahead of me from the beginning. The waitress passed by, and I took the opportunity. I stood up quickly, pulling a few bills from my pocket and tossing them onto the table. I walked toward the exit, keeping my movement steady. Not too fast, not too slow, just casual. Like I wasn't running, like I wasn't afraid, even though I was. As I stepped out onto the sidewalk, the cool night air hit me like a shock. I didn't turn around, didn't check if he was following. I just started walking, not toward home, not toward anywhere familiar, just away from the diner. Away from whoever the hell that guy was. Away from the feeling that I had already lost. I had a choice to make. For real this time. If I stopped now, if I disappeared from the internet, stopped asking questions, never brought this up again, would they let me go? Or was it too late for that? Had I already gone too far? I didn't know the answer. And I wasn't sure if I ever would. But deep down, I had a feeling. They weren't done with me yet. And this was just the beginning. I kept walking. Not toward home. Not toward anywhere familiar. Just moving. Trying to put as much distance as possible between myself and the diner. Between myself and him. But deep down, I knew it didn't matter. If they wanted to find me, they already knew exactly where I was. I could feel it now, the truth settling in my chest like a weight I'd never be able to shake. I was never in control. Not in that airport. Not when they pulled me into that room. Not when they erased my phone, wiped my search history, and followed me through the city. They had let me believe I had choices. But I never really did. I turned a corner and stopped under a streetlight, breathing heavily. My phone was still in my pocket, turned off. It didn't matter. They had already proven that they didn't need my phone to get to me. They were always ahead. I stared at the empty street, my mind racing. I had one question left. One that had been gnawing at me since the beginning. What did I almost see? What was in that picture I never got to take? What was so important that a group of private security would go this far just to erase it? Was it really just about protecting Elon Musk's privacy? Or was it something bigger? Something I wasn't supposed to understand? I stood there for a long time. I wasn't sure how much time passed before I finally decided to go home. I told myself I would stop looking, that I would let it go, that I would do exactly what they wanted. Forget, move on, act like none of this ever happened. But when I got home and turned my phone back on, I had one last message waiting for me. It was different from the others. Not a threat, not a warning, just 4 words. You made the right choice. I stared at it for a long time. Then, without thinking, I deleted it. I closed my laptop. I shut off my phone. And for the first time in weeks, I let myself sleep. Did they leave me alone after that? I don't know. I stopped checking my search history. Stopped looking over my shoulder. Stopped trying to figure out what I wasn't supposed to see. Because at the end of the day, the truth didn't matter. They had already decided for me. Some things you just don't question. And now, I understood why.